When the idea of the possibility of moving downtown was first presented to me, I was shocked and in disbelief. I didn't think this church would do such a thing in a million years. Plus, I have deep ties to this place. Like Imogen, my 3 babies were all dedicated up here on this chancel. And my oldest little girl was memorialized here on one of the most meaningful and heartbreaking days of my life. Her ashes have become a part of the soil that nurtures these trees beyond the window. So if we vote to move, it will take 5 to 10 years for us to get down there. And in that time, there will be moments when you will have to carry me through my grief of saying goodbye. And I promise that I will carry you. Despite all of this, before long, after hearing the possibility, I started to become intrigued. And when the potential location was discovered, I found myself becoming excited. And if you know me, you know that when I get excited about something, I want everyone else to be excited too. This process has created a very uncomfortable tension within me that I've been living with. I don't want anyone to decide to go downtown if that's not what they feel is right. The last thing I want is to be downtown with a congregation full of resentful, unhappy people. And the tension is that I absolutely think that it's the right thing for us to do. Can you see the dilemma? At times, the way that I've tried to resolve this split is by trying to get others excited. At times, this may have caused confusion in some people. If you felt that way, then I want you to know this morning what's been going on for me and let you know that that's where it's been coming from. By the time that it was appropriate to announce this possibility to the congregation, I'd been thinking about it for a few months. And by then, I'd overcome my feelings of shock and disbelief, and I was very enthusiastic. Many in the leadership of the church counseled me that I should remain neutral in this process. They know me as well as you know me, and they know that I sometimes try to sell my ideas. As you can imagine, the idea of remaining neutral was very hard. But I realized that they were right. I knew that each member of this congregation had to go through his or her own process, from the initial shock and disbelief to eventually coming to their own conclusions. And that if I met your shock with my enthusiasm, it was not going to be a good thing. Like all of us, I come to this with my opinions and my own emotions and my own shortcomings. I've tried hard to allow this congregation to learn, to cry, to ask questions, to get excited. And I've listened. And I've discovered what this church and what this building means to people. One thing I've learned from listening is that it's important for me to be honest about where I stand before we vote. One question that I've been asked is, am I going to leave if the congregation votes no next week? The answer to that question is simple. Absolutely not. The hardest result of all this for me would be that we would not be together. We are a community, and those of us who love this church have to stand united regardless of the location. This project and this process does not in any way trump my passion for this community. And I hope it doesn't trump yours either. I'm in it, and I have faith that whichever way the vote goes, we will continue to pursue our vision for 2021. But here's something else. If we decide to move, and it could easily take 5 to 10 years, something could happen to any one of us in that time, including me. A diagnosis, a car accident. We see it all the time. The decision cannot be for me. You have to believe that it's the right thing for this congregation, because if this move is not going to go forward without me, then it's not the right decision to begin with. Let me be clear. Barring unforeseen circumstances, I will be here either way. But this decision cannot be about me. And if I'm honest, it should not be about you either. In making this choice, we need to be faithful to the people who came before us. They sacrificed and risked scorn and ridicule because they felt Tulsa needed a liberal church in order to become a healthy city. And boy, were they right. I can't even imagine this town without All Souls. In the early years, they moved from place to place. They met for a while in Old City Hall, and then at the YWCA. Then they met at Old Temple Israel, eventually the Majestic Theater. And for a long time, the minister from Oklahoma City traveled to be with the congregation every week on Sunday evenings on old roads and old-fashioned vehicles because he believed it too. And finally, they built a church in a prime place in the city at 14th and Boulder. And it was and it still is beautiful. They did it in the midst of the Depression, despite the worst economy the country has ever seen, and amidst insecurity about the future. They did it because it was that important. But years later, when they realized that it was too small, especially for the children, and what's the point of a church like this if it's not for the children? And so they left that prime location and that beautiful church to come to this much less attractive and undeveloped plot of land at that time. And they each scraped to come up with the money to do it. But that's because they had a mission and they knew it. And we do too. And if anyone does not understand the depth and the importance of that mission, then I have failed. This church is not about comfort and pleasure. It never was. It's not even about us. It's about a light that we tend and we are called to pass on to the next generation. It's about freedom. It's about freeing the oppressed, not just the politically oppressed, like when we were involved in the civil rights movement and the work we did in the women's rights movement and more recently on gay rights and immigrant issues. And of course, in our work in the public schools, as we strive to give every child the freedom to learn and to excel. And in starting banks in Central America that it helped the poorest on earth. We've started more banks than any church anywhere in the world, helping the poorest on this planet to become free of the debilitating cycle of hunger and poverty and prostitution. And in supporting our co-religionists in Uganda. It is also about spiritual and religious freedom. Freeing people from the dominant notion that they are depraved and sinful at their very core. Freeing people from doctrines that teach children a worldview that not only shames them about their eternal nature, but also denies scientific truth and breeds spiritual arrogance, that their religion is superior and right, and all others are perversions of God's truth. freeing people from religious ideologies that say that women are less than men, that Jews and Hindus and Muslims and Buddhists are misguided, that being gay is an abomination. We tend a light in this world. With our lives, we breathe a warmth into this cold earth. And we do it because we love beyond belief. Some people think we need to do this for parking. Other people think we need to do this for classroom space for the children, others for our choirs, others for environmental reasons, and many other very, very good and very true considerations. But I'm excited because I'm convinced that this is what we need to do in our time to tend the light of religious freedom that has been given to us. Our John Wolfe scholar and Unitarian Universalist historian Mark Morrison Reed explained to us last week that in the 1950s, Unitarian Universalist churches all over the country abandoned the cities and moved out into the suburbs. It was part of the white flight that has decimated the school systems, in urban school systems in America, and that served to segregate the cities along racial lines that could no longer be drawn legally. In leaving the city centers and retreating into the suburbs, Unitarian Universalists across America gave ourselves the option to engage in urban issues or not, depending on our interest or inclination at the time, so that we did not have to weigh in on issues of hunger and homelessness or police brutality or inadequate resources for education, because we could remain in our ivory towers surrounded by huge lawns and old trees, and we could rush in and help when it was convenient or expedient, even while saying every Sunday that service is our law. I have a fire in my belly for this opportunity because I am convinced that it will help us to bring together our words and our actions in a profoundly meaningful way. And we will be changed by it. And we will create change in this city by doing it. Now, there's a consumerist ethos that pervades and degrades our culture. It teaches us to make decisions based on personal preference and comfort and personal wants and desires. It is so insidious that it even creeps into our conversations about our congregation. I fear for a congregation of people who would make decisions about their church with a consumer mentality, when the question before us is not about us. It is about being faithful to those who gave us this place, those who sacrificed much so that Tulsa would have this place, and faithful to the future generations who will not fully understand what we've done, but who will forever thank us for it. I believe our mission calls us to take this step. And I know there are others who believe in our mission with equal passion, who may see turning down this opportunity as the best way to be faithful to our mission. And even though we disagree, as long as everyone casts his or her vote based on their assessment of our mission and the heritage that we represent, then I do not mind which way they vote. It is only those who vote as a consumer for what they want themselves who fall short of the sacred task that is before us next week. I'll be here to minister to you and to cry with you whichever way the vote goes. Because those of us who love this church must stay united no matter what. I'll be here because I love you. And I love all souls, and I believe in it. And because we have a job. We have a job to make sure that light which we tend but did not kindle shall not and will never be put out. Amen.